Are you?
Okay, how you doing?
Good.
We have a quorum, but I want to give more time.
There's more people attending than there are panelists. Morning, Jim, or afternoon, Jim.
Good afternoon. Nice seeing you guys.
Heather's in Selma.
Oh, really?
Mm.
What did you just say?
I
She's
said
visiting her mom. She's down
she's
in
in
Alabama.
Selma.
Well, I think I want to wait. I know Councillor Connell is going to be on tonight. Give another minute. Check. the
Sure he's
agenda.
not in the attendees list where he usually hangs out?
No, I'm certainly not sure.
No, I don't see him there yet.
He's out.
There he is.
Okay, we have 9 of us. I think Councillor Devlin may be late. I think he had emailed the clerk that he was traveling. Councillor Shan's not going to be able to attend. She's got a family matter out of town. Before we get started and have the call to order, there are 3 people to remember tonight. Public Services Director Tony Fernari lost his mother, Ida Ann and Selma Fernari, to Alzheimer's. And she had suffered for about a decade from that. So we send our regrets to Tony's family. And we remember Mrs. Fernari tonight. Waterfront Trust Chair Steve Hines and his wife Susan have lost their son, Michael Hines. Many of you may have heard, to complications. And they had already suffered, of course, the loss of their son, Derek. So our heart goes out to their family. But I especially want to remember Mike Hines's widow, and he had 2 young daughters. Finally, Joan Morden Russell also passed away recently. Ms. Russell was the matriarch of a large family that includes Susan Aquaviva, who's a bookkeeper for the Park and Cleric and Youth Services, and known to many of us. So our condolences to their family too. Please join me in a moment of silence to acknowledge these losses. Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we call the roll?
Yeah, happy to, Mr. President. Councilor Lane. Councilor Lane, are you present? Thank you. Councilor McCauley.
Present.
Councilor Connell.
Present.
Councilor Shan is absent. Councilor Tantar.
Present.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Wallace.
Present.
Very good. Councilor Zeid.
Here.
Councilor Devlin is absent. Also, Councilor Khan.
Present.
Council President Eigenman.
Here.
9 present, 2 absent.
That's pretty good. Any late filed items?
I'm happy to report there are no late file items.
Okay. I'm going to go to public comment. Our rigmarole in the COVID world is electronically. Please raise your hand. I have 21 attendees. Going once, going twice. I am closing public comment. However, no, latecomer. Okay, so I'm going to recognize Louis Blatt. Mr. Blatt, please identify yourself, give your home address, and you have 2 minutes. You're on. I think you have to unmute yourself, though. Yeah, there you go.
Hello, my name is Lou Blatt. I live at 77th Street, number 10 in Newburyport. I hope I'm getting the protocol correct to speak up now, but I believe on your docket this evening is the discussion on Preservation Terrace and the erosion situation. Is that true? And do I speak now?
Yes, it's on the agenda. Go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. So I would just like to say that there's been a lot of outpouring of support recently by local organizations and especially Mayor Holaday to take action against a very bad situation here down in Reservation Terrace, in which we're losing the sand very quickly and people's homes are under threat. After a long summer, the dunes have been decimated by human traffic, and the storm season is on its way, and people are going to lose their homes. So I just wanted to urge your council to take it very seriously and to do all you can to try to protect our citizens and their homes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blatt. Any other public comment? Seeing none, for keeps. The Marshal has a commendation that he wanted to give, and so I'm going to recognize City Marshal Mark Murray. Marshal, you are unmuted on this end. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to commend a couple officers, Officer Charles Vidaris and Officer Michael Follette. I felt the need to share this with the public and the council. We will be doing a press release tomorrow. What I'm going to share is this happens quite a bit, and our officers do this on their own. A lot of times they don't even log it, and we don't even know about it. We find out down the road later on. So this case, the sergeant asked him to do a little minor report on it. So what happened on September 6th, the two of them were working. An initial call came in that someone called a passerby that observed a female woman in some kind of distress up at Story Avenue on the median with a car with her hazards on, and she was holding a baby in her hand. So they didn't know what kind of call it was. They were assuming it might have been some kind of medical, so they both went up. And when they went up, they ended up talking to the woman, and she had said she had left. She was leaving Portland, Maine, and heading to New Jersey to her mother's house, and she was kind of down on her luck. And she was pregnant, and she had 4 children with her, and she had no money. So she decided to stop in Newburyport to panhandle. So she was up on the median strip up at Story Avenue. That's what she was doing. She was begging for money. The two officers finally talked to her for a while, and they ran out of options, and they decided between the two of them to fill her tank up with gas and to provide food for her and her children, and also gave her some guidance that there's some help out there for her. So, and then she went on her way. And I just felt a need that they're going to be commended for this, and I felt the need to share it with you guys. It's a good story. And this happens a lot, and it will happen again down the road. So they do this, excuse me, a lot.
No, thank you for bringing that to attention, Marshal. Appreciate it. Please give our good wishes to the two officers. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, we have Mayor's comment. So I will unmute her. Mayor Holaday, I think you're on.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President Eigerman, members of the council. Brief update today. Really wanted to thank Budget and Finance. I thought we had an excellent discussion during their subcommittee meeting. And as you heard from one of the residents, I can't reiterate the importance of approving the $50,000 transfer request so that we can begin mobilization of this important stabilization project for the homes, but also for the water and sewer project. We're very concerned about the upcoming storm season. And I did have an exchange with the Lieutenant Governor, and she's going to get back to me about the potential of DCR contributing to this project, which would be wonderful. And we also discussed it at the MRBA meeting on Friday. There is still a possibility that the residents there's I think somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 left in an account from the former dune nourishment. They're willing to put this money towards the project. We're trying to get a second tier of the super SACs in as many places as possible. And so as we go forward after your vote tonight, which I'm hoping will be very favorable for this project, again, keep in mind, since this is the settlement account for the water and sewer, that it requires a supermajority vote. This is really critical that we mobilize as soon as possible on this project. So thank you. Quick update on the algae bloom. They have both in the upper and lower artichoke reservoirs have been successfully treated. The algae bloom is dissolved. They did use Cllr sulfate, which was very successful, and it has been confirmed by the limnologist consultants that we're working with. I wanted to thank DPS and specifically our water superintendent, Tom Cusick, and his team and the water division for doing such hard work and being so diligent in resolving this issue. They will continue to monitor and sample the reservoirs as well as our water supply as they begin to look at ways that they can prevent future blooms. The local agricultural use is impacting. KP Law did send an enforcement letter to one of the farms who immediately put up a fence, have reduced their amount of livestock, and that should also help. We have more work to do in this area regarding some of the surrounding properties, but I was very pleased with their response. So as a result, even though we're still in drought conditions, we will be making modifications which will be released tomorrow in a press release where we will allow outside watering from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., alternating days between odd and even addresses citywide. And again, that information will be posted tomorrow in a press release sent out. I am very, very pleased to announce that the city received a $1 million grant from the Municipal Vulnerabilities Protection Program, and that is for protection of the wastewater treatment facility. And we will be submitting the grant acceptance to your next meeting on September 29th, as well as a request to release the $150,000 in CPC funding for this project, as well as a $100,000 Mass Trails Grant Program, which will help cover the match for this project. Some talk with the Lieutenant Governor about them coming up to do the announcement in Newburyport for this round of MVP grants. We'll let you know if that should happen. I'm very, very pleased about us receiving this grant program. In terms of the Cllr City Rail Trail cleanup, the backfill is nearly complete. We're waiting one more test result on the soils on the wastewater treatment property, but our goal is to still open up the gates for informal use by the end of September. I would also like to extend my sincerest thanks to our city clerk, Richie Jones, and to his staff for overseeing this primary election. With the addition of mail-in ballots and the high turnout, it was quite challenging for the clerk's office, and I commend them for their hard work in creating a very smooth primary election. These are really unprecedented times in terms of voting, and we're going to meet this week to ensure that we have sufficient resources and staff, as we know the ballots will increase dramatically for the general election in November. I just wanted to remind people that the CDBG grant for small business assistance is still up and running. We still have money there. We've had 14 applications, I believe, and encourage small businesses to please go to our website, download the application, and please apply. We also have the rental assistance program for people that is still in effect. We still have money in that account and encourage people who are struggling with their rents to please reach out to Pettingill House directly for that program. And last Thursday, a press release went out. We're calling for applications for membership in the creation of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI Alliance. The applications are due Friday, September 25th, and instructions are on the city website in terms of completing that. And finally, I just wanted to add my voice to, I believe the Acts of '87 are coming out of committee tonight. And I just wanted to reiterate the fact that this particular act requires approval of the city council and the mayor, and there is no override. There was a recent decision by the mayor of Boston and the city council that confirmed that this is a vote that requires both approval of the council and the mayor. And my administration has focused diligently on the schools over the last decade. And even though during the Budget and Finance meeting, we talked about the 3.5% forecast that was presented each November, there has not been a single budget that has been submitted to the council that has remained at that 3.5% level. I will not support this. This is the purview of the superintendent and the school committee. Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for the mayor from councilors? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Well, no, I spoke too soon. Councilor Tantar.
Sorry, I was just slow hitting the raised hand. Mayor, on the algae bloom, toxins, are there no toxins?
No toxins.
No toxins. So the continued testing is to see if toxins have settled and might still be present, but none have been found.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Connell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mayor, I'd just like to point out, and it was pointed out to me, and I went and confirmed the observations of a resident, that the Safe Routes to School project has left a pretty sloppy mess on High Street around the schools, and in particular, the iron plates that were set down to cover up some digging had large gaps in them that could catch bicycle tires and send people over the bars, as well as quite a bit of loose gravel at the base of Summit Street, I believe it was, that was out onto the street over the weekend. And I just point this out and wonder if we are properly supervising the contractor in that case, and if perhaps we could ask them to tidy the site up a bit, because it's not only unsightly, but potentially dangerous.
Thank you, Counselor. I will absolutely check on that tomorrow and have Jordy report back to the construction crew in terms of tightening that up. I mean, the project is moving forward, and but you're right, they can't leave the site there, especially since students will be returning to school this week.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other councilors? Scanning the board. Okay, thank you very much, Mayor. I think that's it.
You're welcome.
Okay, where was I? Now to the consent agenda.
Which consists this evening of the approval of the minutes for August 31st. There are no communications, nor are there transfers, nor appointments. There are the following items coming out of planning and development. There's communication 257, letter regarding Harrison Street. The appointment of Brendan Banovic, 1 Walnut Street, to the ZBA until 8/31/2021. That's coming out. Bob Armstrong's appointment is being held in committee, I understand. Appointment 188, Rachel Webb, 19 Chapel Street, ZBA, until 10/1/2025 is also coming out. And that is the end of the consent agenda.
Okay, so all we have are the approval of the minutes from August 31st. A letter from Judy Timon, you said? I want to make sure, is that coming out?
Mm-hmm.
My
Okay,
understanding, yes.
all right. Well, so, okay, so that's out. And then the appointments of Banovic and Webb are out. The Robert Armstrong has been pulled. What's the will of the council? Oh, wait, no, someone's raising a hand. Councilor Zeid.
I just a couple comments. One was there's also some budget and finance items, I believe, that weren't mentioned there. Did I miss them?
There are, Counselor, but I believe the Chairman of Budget and Finance did not wish them in the consent agenda.
Okay. And then second question is, if we don't have the Chair of Planning and Development, are we going to take up the Planning and Development items tonight?
Yes, we have a vice chair standing by.
Okay. Then motion to approve.
Oh, hold on. Councilor McCauley.
Yes, I'd like to pull communication 257. That was actually being held in committee. I think it was just a communication error.
Okay. Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, just a clarification, Budget and Finance did not have an opportunity to meet until the deadline. And so we had not met, the committee had not voted as to what to take out. So I felt uncomfortable putting in the consent agenda, which would not require a motion to approve. So it's in the budget and finance. I'm gonna move that they be removed from committee the way we used to do it. I just didn't feel comfortable putting in the consent agenda. Just clarification on that.
Thank you. Other counselors? Okay, so it's approval of the minutes, and it's 2 appointments, Banovic and Webb. How about a motion?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so that's done. On to the regular agenda.
Mayor's update.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Second reading of appointments, Mr. President. We have appointment 186, Rosemary Deasy, 8 Fenders Ave, to the Council on Aging until 5/31/2025. And appointment 189, Karen Sakinawa, 71 Middle Street, Commission on Disabilities until 9/30/2020.
Motion to approve collectively.
Second.
Councilor Zeid?
I just, is that 9/30/20 correct? That's in like 15 days. Was it supposed to be 9/30 something else?
I'm sure it was.
23 maybe, or those 3-year appointments? 20, 21, 23,
No.
25.
Well, let's pin that down before we vote. All right, while the clerk's only got 2 hands. See if we can figure that out. I'm looking at the code. Well, let's have a vote on, how about a motion on Karen second, Niwa?
I'll withdraw my previous motion.
I think
I'm sorry, on Rosemary DC. Let's do Rosemary DC, please. Is there a motion?
Yeah, motion
approve on
to-
second, sorry.
Second.
Okay, so Councilor Zeid has moved to approve and Councilor Khan to second. Let's do a roll call on Rosemary DC, please.
Rosemary Deasy until 5/31/2025. Councilor Lane,
Yes.
Councilor McCauley,
Yes.
Councilor Connell,
Yes.
Councilor Shan, Councilor Tontar,
Yes.
Councilor Vogel,
Yes.
Councilor Wallace,
Yes.
Councilor Zeid,
Yes.
Councilor Khan,
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
That is DC.
Oh,
I am sorry to report that I'm not in my office and I don't have access to, I'm sure it's in the packet from last week. If you want, maybe we can proceed and come back to it, Mr. President, in the
How
meantime.
about a motion to table?
So moved.
Or a second?
Second.
All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, we tabled that.
Unfortunately, it
you.
was in the packet last time as 9/30/22. I didn't catch it last time, so that's not going to help us,
All right,
unfortunately.
well, we'll kick it to the end. Let's see, communications, none.
None.
Hey,
Orders.
point of order. I do want to let the clerk know that Councilor Devlin has joined. I don't think he was on the roll call for the appointment.
Thank you, Councilor Khan.
That's okay, because I didn't know what we were talking about.
Okay, so we're on to orders.
So the first order chronologically would be Order 2209, which is the borrowing authorization. Reads as follows: City Council rescinds the following amounts that have been authorized to be borrowed, but which are no longer needed for the purposes for which they were originally approved. Purpose: sewer infrastructure, 700,000, water system improvements, 46, land acquisition, 500,000, wastewater treatment, 11,000, water treatment plant, 1,000,002, wastewater treatment facility, 6,000,002, Bresnahan Elementary, 165,000, Knock, Middle Molen, $399,000, submitted Councilor Tantar.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second.
Counselor Tantar?
That's what I was going to move. I was waiting to be recognized.
Okay. Thank you. All right, motion is to refer. Any discussion on the motion to refer? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That is referred. Thank you. What else you got?
Next order is a resolutions, order 210. It's a resolution with respect to Nancy Peace. It's my understanding that Councilor Connell and perhaps the moving Councilor Eigenman would like to approve this tonight, which means we would start with an emergency preamble, Mr. President.
Yes, a motion to suspend the rules so that we can take this up in one reading tonight.
Well, I think,
Second.
okay, so, well, okay, motion to suspend the rules to take up in one reading. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, the reason for this request to suspend the rules and take it up tonight in one reading is that the library, Friends of the Library will be meeting later this week, and they would very much like to make this presentation at their meeting this week. Nancy Peace has been a stalwart supporter of our libraries and supportive of many beneficial activities throughout the city for decades. And if there's anybody more deserving, I can't think of who it is.
Thank you, Counselor. Other speakers on suspending the rule? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? I think that's the 2/3 we need.
Who was
Okay,
the
so that's
second on that, Mr. President?
I don't
Council
remember.
McCauley.
Counselor McCauley.
Thank you.
So now we need emergency preamble, and our custom, I
I
guess,
have
is
one,
yeah. Go ahead,
I have one drafted if you would like.
please. Go right ahead.
Pursuant to Charter Section 29B and further in Section 1.7, an emergency exists due to the timing of the next meeting of the Friends of the Public Library and the desire to present Nancy Peace with this resolution therein. Therefore, the City Council hereby affirmatively declares that an emergency exists in order for said measure to be acted upon at its first introduction to the council, and that is Barry Connell, at-large councilor.
Any discussion of that? Seeing none. Let's do a roll call.
Councilor Lane,
Yes.
Councilor McCauley,
Yes.
Councilor Connell,
Yes.
Councilor Tantar,
Yes.
Councilor Vogel,
Yes.
Councilor Wallace,
Yes.
Councilor Zeid,
Yes.
Councilor Devlin,
Yes.
Councilor Khan,
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
Emergency preamble passes. That leaves us with the resolution, Mr. President. Shall I read it?
Yeah, but I need a motion. Yeah, no, let you read it, then we'll get a motion. Go ahead.
Resolution, whereas Nancy Peace of Newburyport, Massachusetts is stepping down from her position as Director of the Board of the Friends of the Newburyport Public Library. And whereas said board desires to honor her for her outstanding work and her years of service to the library. And whereas Nancy Peace's untiring work for the Friends of the Newburyport Public Library highlights the fact that our library is a cornerstone of the community, providing opportunities for all to engage in the joy of lifelong learning and connect with the thoughts and ideas of others from ages past to the present. And whereas Nancy Peace understands the critical importance of well-funded libraries and advocates with intelligence and good humor to ensure that our library gets the resources it needs to provide a wide variety of services to local citizens of all ages. And whereas Nancy Peace's gift of her time and commitment to the library sets a stellar example for all in how volunteerism leads to a positive civic engagement and the betterment of our community. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Newburyport hereby offers its best wishes as Nancy Peace steps down from said board, and further proclaims its sincere appreciation of Nancy Peace for her dedicated service and devotion to the Friends of the Newburyport Public Library, and more particularly for her serving as its president of the board of the Friends of the Newburyport Public Library from the year 2013 to the year 2020. Submitted, Councilor Jared J. Eigerman.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? So that's unanimous. So our congratulations and thanks to Ms. Peace. There was a lot of procedure there, but I hope the sentiment made it through. Thank you very much for your service. I think we can take a motion to take off the table Sakinawa. I think I found the answer on that one.
Wonderful.
So moved.
So second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 About a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all right, I'll make a motion to amend to 2025. It's a 5-year. I have that right? I'm sorry. No, it's incorrect. It says 2020 when it was introduced. So I'm going to turn to Chief Coogan. What do you want to do, or the mayor? Any thoughts? Any thoughts at all? Okay.
Matt,
Yes. Chief Coogan, you're on.
I don't believe Council President, I don't have that information at the moment. It sounds like it may have been submitted with the date of 2020, so we'll have to go back and see whether that's I can't assume that's the right date, so we'd have to go back and see what the actual date is. For the
Okay.
appointment.
All right. I apologize. I was looking at DC and I thought I had the answer, but I had the wrong person. So how about a motion to continue to a date certain? How about that?
So move.
Which date?
Oh, date. Next, when's our next council meeting? 28th, 29th?
29th.
29th.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right. We'll try it again next time. On to ordinances. Anything?
There are none, Mr. President.
Hot dog. Committee items. We'll do it in order. So the ad hoc committee on economic development, we did actually, I chair that one, and we did actually have a meeting last week. Chief Coogan participated, and Councilor Shand and McCauley to the bitter end. We're going to keep that in committee. Mr. Gasparo has some good ideas, and I know that Councilor Tantar was deputized to give him feedback on how far we took it. In a nutshell, the idea in Mr. Gasparo's letter was, in this COVID pandemic, are there some emergency measures that we might take to help office-based businesses, not just restaurant businesses? And that's what we continue to wrestle with, and all ideas are welcome. I have not scheduled the next meeting, but I will give everyone notice so they can participate. Ad hoc committee on Central Waterfront, which I could post it as committee of the whole if people like. I haven't done that. But we do have a meeting scheduled for the 24th. And at that meeting, the idea is to hear back from staff. So both Waterfront Trust representative and Matt Pianazek and Andy Port, the planning director, on existing data they have for hazardous materials on site, closing that out, utility issues, all the things that we want to make sure we have our arms around before our request for proposals goes out on the street to hire a landscape architect. That's what's going on there. Budget and Finance, Chair Tantar.
Motion to remove Order 178 from the Budget and Finance Committee.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed to removal? Seeing none. Back to Councilor Tantar.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Councillor Tantar.
So the Budget and Finance Committee considered this at our last meeting on last Thursday, and by a 3-0 vote, we voted to bring this before the council without a recommendation from the committee. So I want that to be clear. My remarks now are my own, and they do not reflect the thinking of the committee.
Please go ahead.
Get a couple things. First of all, we received a communication today from school committee member Spalding, in which she indicated her support for the acts of 1987, the passage. However, there is an error, although she conditioned what she said. In a second paragraph, she said, "It is my understanding this budget increase would only happen by request of the school committee and not be in an amount exceeding the levy limits of Proposition 2.5. The school committee can currently, or if this passes and is accepted by the mayor, the school committee is not bound by staying within the levy limit. They can suggest any kind of increase that they feel is necessary. It's the mayor who must balance the budget given Proposition 2.5, and the city council. This is what the acts of 1987 do mandate, that the city council cannot increase the school budget to the extent that it would increase it over the levy. So in other words, if the school committee were to request it and it would go over the levy, then it would be up to the city council to find cuts elsewhere in the budget. And I want to be clear on that. The school committee is not mandated to do that. Secondly, in 2015, this came before us. The council passed it unanimously. I voted for it then. Circumstances were somewhat different at that point. For one thing, the school committee had requested increases over what the mayor had, and Councilor Hotquist at the time, who was working in Amesbury, had suggested this, and Amesbury had just passed, accepted the acts of 1987, and Mayor Cllr had accepted. I had a lengthy conversation actually last spring on this with the former mayor of Amesbury, and he said he ended up supporting it because he felt that the public would recognize that if the mayor had put forward a budget and the council thought that it was insufficient and required cuts elsewhere in the budget, that voters would understand, where to place the blame. So the councils would bear responsibility, and by the way, it was brought in committee, out in committee. The Framingham just approved the acts of 1987, and former Mayor Cllr is the chief of staff of the new mayor. It's a new city. Framingham just became a city a couple of years ago. If we look at what has happened in Amesbury, and this is what gives me cause to concern. In committee, I noted that I was concerned about the unintended consequences of passing the acts of 1987, and in particular that it could increase divisiveness and conflict within the city council, and also between the city council and the school committee, that could rebound in a negative way toward funding toward the schools. I would also note that Mayor Cllr was not reelected. Amesbury has had now 3 mayors over this period of time. And I'd also note that Amesbury is undertaking severe cuts to its budget, in spite of the fact that the school committee in Amesbury did recommend a large percent increase, but it was in the middle of the pandemic thing, perhaps before they realized what the ramifications of the pandemic were. So my concern again is that this raises the possibility of conflict. I mean, and it will. It's more not so much I mean, I imagine some people say this is, either pro-education funding or anti-education funding. I don't see it that way. I see it as a change in the dynamic that could make a budget process much more difficult. So for instance, it would be possible for a school committee to propose funding that the mayor would have to reject, because the mayor is required to balance the budget. And either the mayor may determine that cuts in other departments are too great or unwarranted, or the cut in services that would result were not in the city's best interest. And then the city council would get to vote as, make a separate decision on that. I do know in Amesbury that I spoke with the city council who was on the council at the time, and Ferguson, and she noted, and she, by the way, she supports the Act of 1987, and she noted that there were cuts in the fire department and their Department of Public Works as a result of doing that. And not that that's the worst thing in the world, but I do know, I'm concerned that it does add an element of conflict and potential divisiveness to the process. I'd also note that over the past 10 years, the school committee in Newburyport has not once passed a budget where the mayor had to decrease it. I would also note that over the past, I just figured out for the past 10 years, the average increase in the school budget has been 4.3% over that time, with the highest amount in fiscal year 15 of 8.3%. And this year, we are increasing the school budget at a time when many school districts are decreasing it. So I'd be very wary of introducing it this year. It would not go into effect until next year. I suspect next year's budget is, quite frankly, going to be brutal. So I would urge you, I intend to vote no, I would urge you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zeid.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a few remarks as one of the co-sponsors of this. Councilor Tontar did touch upon some of the history and the introduction of this in 2015, but just first, by way of brief introduction, I think most people understand this at this point, but just to make sure that it's clear, because we also received another letter from the vice chair of the school committee that unfortunately had several errors in it as well that were simply not correct in terms of how this works. So this is a pretty high bar. This is a process by which the school committee, working with the city council, a majority vote of the school committee plus a supermajority vote of the city council could increase the school budget. So in my opinion, right off the bat, it does allow for that, but it's an extremely high bar in order to do so. I think it was designed that way on purpose. And so that's really important to understand, that this is not a unilateral power, or does not become a unilateral power of the city council to override, discard, or just simply do away with a recommendation of the school committee. In fact, the recommendation to increase the budget has to originate from the school committee in the first place. So that's kind of what's on the table here to begin with. It was already mentioned, but this was introduced in 2015. It did pass by a vote of 11-0. And, I do have to disagree respectfully with my at-large colleague on actually several points. It's interesting to talk about, okay, what happened in 2015, what happened over the past 10 years. Those things are certainly instructive in trying to figure out what the impact of this legislation would be. But I'm urging my colleagues here to think about this as the creation of a crucial, really important check and balance. So many folks out in the public don't really know that the city council doesn't really have any authority over adding to the budget in any way, shape, or form. Any of the lines, any of the departments, we don't have the ability to initiate projects or expenditures. That's well enshrined in our charter and is pretty well known, and our power generally is limited to cutting lines in the budget. So this proposal here, essentially creates a different kind of environment. I will agree on that point. And it's a change. The current environment, essentially the only person who holds the keys to the budget, including the schools, is the mayor. And that's almost, in my humble opinion, unilateral power, because the school committee can recommend anything they want, and the city council can say anything they want. And I've certainly been on the end of that many times over the past several years, asking for some of the cuts that we've made, or in some cases, all of the cuts that we've made to go to the schools, and simply have to ask or request rather than having a formalized process. So this is a check and balance. I agree that it's not really worth looking at this as a pro-school funding or con-school funding. This is about being pro-process. So the one thing I disagree with most is that this proposal would increase divisiveness. I actually think it would go the other way, fostering a better relationship between the city council and the school committee. The school committee is a duly elected group, and their charge is to deal with the schools. But guess what? As insofar as the city council is responsible for the budget, which is one of our greatest and highest powers, I believe some look at it as one of our very few things that we have purview over. The schools are a large part of that budget, and as such, I think having a better handle, better discussion, something we've talked about over the last several years, having a better relationship and working more closely with the school committee really does make good sense. And I don't see this as being used very often. I just think it does create a different type of environment, pardon me. We want to strive for excellence. We want to have that discussion. We want to have that discussion citywide. So I really strongly disagree that we're creating more divisiveness. Again, I think we'd be going the other way, fostering a better relationship, better discussions, and having a more real discussion where there is, yes, essentially an override over the mayor if the mayor in the future says, you know what, I'm not going to go with enough money, and again, as decided by a large number of individuals, a majority on the school committee and a supermajority on the city council. The last piece I want to address is, I did hear the mayor's comments during the mayor's comment earlier, and I understand that the mayor vetoed this the last time it came around, but with all due respect, if the best argument one has is that, well, you've got to have the mayor approve this in order for it to go through, that's not really substantive debate. The mayor has stated several times, including tonight, the importance of education to our administration. If that is indeed the case, please don't veto this. This is the right process for a city where the mayor is the chair of the school committee. It provides a necessary and important check and balance and relief valve. None of us are going to be here forever in the position of council, in the position of mayor, in the position of school committee. And it's our responsibility here to create a process that makes sense going forward, that protects. There's virtually nothing in government that's unchecked. Everything has a balance and a counterbalance to it. And this is one of those areas where I think that's a little bit lacking. And this Acts of 1987 gives us an opportunity to correct that. And clearly they felt that was strong enough and most important enough at the state level to give cities and towns, or I guess cities in particular, the opportunity to adopt this. So I'm asking you to vote for this. I really do think it should pass unanimously. It's good process. It makes good sense. It's a good check and balance. And then I would ask respectfully that the mayor not veto this. Please don't make it about vetoing it and whether you must have the mayor's okay or not okay for this to pass. Let's have a substantive debate on the merits, and I think that's what I've tried to present to you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Khan.
Great, thank you, Council President. As the third member of the Budget and Finance Committee, I am obviously not a sponsor for this, so I kind of came at it very objectively, trying to just do my research and look at it with both lenses. I did hear and know obviously of the history where in 2015 it did pass unanimously, but then it wasn't signed by the mayor. So, starting from that point, it begs the question of, what needs to be probed about this? What are the pitfalls? What are some areas that could kind of be, get us later on? And in all that kind of, I guess, research, what I was really honing in on is, where's some kind of details on why this is even there. And during that process, I found the FAQ that's on the Division of Local Services, which is available for municipalities to look at when you want to get a little bit more into the details on the general laws out there. And in the FAQ, this was one of the items called out. And when it's about talking about when can a city council increase an appropriation in the annual budget. And so in reading through that a little bit more, I really got a better grasp on kind of how, as the councillor from Ward 1 said, this does create an opportunity for transparency, for communication. I actually, learned quite a bit in going down that path of really trying to see where are the benefits of this. So while initially, I hear the points that have been raised here, and I do think there's some great kind of, this could really bode well for a future in how we do look at the budget, how we look at the school budget and the school committee's role in that process. And in looking at, again, who's really eligible for this local option, it looks like it's for cities. And of that, out of the 351 towns and cities, 57 are cities. But it also behooves itself to one with a mayor and a council. So that kind of brings the number down to about 44 communities. And so one of the questions I always wonder is why are more communities not adopting it? And I think part of this process, if you delve into it a little bit more, is really understanding on the potential to use it. And it's not easy to execute. And I think that's a really important aspect here too. It's nice to have this as an option, especially as we're talking about schools and that education, the presentations that we've all sat through is where can, we always look to see where can we meet the goals that the school's going towards and what's going to be used to spend towards reaching those goals. I feel like that communication can now even have some other aspects brought into it by also knowing that this is here available if we're not getting to the goals we need to. And in communities like Framingham, where they did adopt it, the mayor's not on their school committee. So in this situation, I think for Newburyport, the mayor is in those conversations and can also share and be very kind of detailed with the school committee. And she has a vote. So it would have to come through a vote from the school committee on recommending this increase, which then would come to the city council and need a 2/3 majority vote. So there's really a process, I think, that would be done, that this would not just be done carelessly. I think there would be definitely a lot of communications and understanding how the increase and why that increase needs to be done and seen. So with that said, I will be supporting this, and I guess I'll leave it at there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Councilor Devlin.
Yes, thank you. I can speak as a sponsor that, as I said in the, school budget and part of the budget seminars last week, and then also just the discussion of reopening in the school committee meeting a couple of meetings ago. I get a tremendous amount of questions about the schools and the school budget from residents with kids in the school system and others who don't. So certainly I would say the vast majority of the residents think we have a say over the school budget more than we do. A lot of them are shocked when I tell them, we can only vote up or down on the budget and don't really have any power to change the school committee's budget. And it's part of the reason I explained to them is we have an elected school committee to do that, and we don't want to be undoing their work. In this case, we actually need the cooperation. I don't know how this would create divisiveness. We actually need the cooperation of the school committee in order to do this. They need to have a majority vote. So the way I look at this, we're asking for a small, kind of piece here. We already have a piece. We review the budget. We just spent nearly 2 hours interviewing the school superintendent and the finance director for the schools a week or two ago about the school budget. We listened to a presentation and asked questions about the Whittier budget. We do have control. I actually think it gets more divisive now because we can only go up or down. And in this case, I think that's a sign of some frustration on some of our part, that we'd like to do more. And I think residents would agree with that. We are 61% of the elected representatives in Newburyport. There's 6 on the school committee plus the mayor makes 7. But we certainly don't, have that sort of control over 50% of our budget. And this isn't going to give it to us, but it's going to give us, some additional say in something that most people think we have a say in. I would say about the divisiveness, this is my 5th budget. In the first budget, I think we cut nearly $80,000. And within 5 minutes, we had a unanimous consent recommendation that it goes to the schools. And within 5 minutes, we had it back in. It was increased to the schools. For me, that was one of the most collaborative and memorable things we did as a city. The mayor was on board. The school committee was overjoyed. The superintendent was happy. I don't remember anybody making a comment against that. I think the next year we were all pooped out from the garage. I think that was, and there wasn't a lot in that budget. And then in the third and fourth years, we made cuts that, I think generally everybody saw going to the school committees. It didn't happen last year, but going to the school budget. This is limited circumstances. It's power that's still going to be with the school committee because we need their majority vote. Again, I'll go back to the 61% of the elected representatives. We certainly take more than 61% of the flack from the residents for our budget, taxes, cost of living in Newburyport. So I don't think this is a big ask. I'd also like to note that Amesbury mayor is an ex officio member of the school committee, meaning that she's not, the current mayor is not a voting member. Our mayor is a voting member. So one elected representative is not only a voting member, but also gets the debate, but also proposes the rest of the budget. So, I hope this isn't seen as an incursion into that, because it's not. It would take more than, probably, I don't know, we can't do the math out easily, but a majority of the school committee plus a super majority of us is probably more than 60% of the elected population, the elected representatives need to agree to this. So again, I don't see this being used that often. And I just don't see the budget cuts. We've made budget cuts every year except for in the 4 years I've been doing this, except for once. So the last thing I would say about our elected, and this is not to undervalue the school committee in a lot of ways, because they only focus on one thing. They have sort of an unappreciated role, but this is my third term. I've never had an election where I wasn't running against somebody. I know some ward councils occasionally do, but I think this city council, we have more electoral participation than the school committee. I don't remember a school committee contested election since I've been in city council. I certainly do remember that they have not had the same voter turnout. So again, this is including, in a very small way, some more elected representatives, and I think on a more high profile sort of status. And so I think this is in the best interest of not only the city council, but in the interest of the city, and I'll be voting yes.
Thank you. Other councilors? Councilor Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to stand not in favor. I do believe that it'll create divisiveness. I do believe that it'll create acrimony. There's a lot of debate back and forth as to how this will exactly work. And one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that we are presented with a balanced budget each and every year. And if that budget comes at us balanced, and there's also a movement to put more money into the schools, something has to give. So be it sidewalks, or be it streets, or be it safety, namely our police department or our fire department, something has to give. And I think it's really important to understand that this is not just a simple, oh, let's put more money back in the schools. It has to come from somewhere because we can't increase the levy. So that's huge. And I think that over the years that I have been city councilor, however many it's been now at large, and a couple more times as a ward councilor, it's always been a balanced budget. I take that back. 1 year may not have come in as balanced, but it ends up always being balanced, and it always comes out with a lot of effort before we pass the budget. And I think that if we set this up in such a way that it sets out there that I think we actually create more divisiveness. What is it? 20% of the population or the households in Newburyport have children, and that number is represented by over half of the budget goes to the schools. So I'm all in favor for schools. I've always voted in favor for the schools. I'm in favor for as much money as we can send to the schools. I'm not anti-school when I vote no on this. I'm actually anti-acrimony. It is a high bar. That's true. I can see it out there, but there are scenarios that that high bar gets worked. And even though in the year that we cut money from the budget and immediately went to the schools, that was predetermined. That discussion had happened early on. That was decided on, that it was going to happen. And then a couple of years later, we passed a budget, cut money, sent it to the schools, and they actually were shocked and didn't really want it. So when the communication is there, the system as we have it now works. I do believe we need to work closely with the school committee. I believe in the counselor at large that perhaps there can be more participation and more input from the school committee and working together. I think that that's a great idea. I don't think that this is the way to do it. Again, I do believe it's divisive. We do have a check and balance system. We are able to cut money from the budget. And the reason that we cannot add it specifically is because it's in the charter. So we have that rule. We have that guidance. And we are able to, there is a check and balance on the budget. Again, I'm not sure of the piece about transparency. In my efforts on city council, I find budget efforts to be very transparent. I find all my questions to be answered. We have hearings. We talk to people quite candidly. We get more information that comes at us than we can possibly read. I just don't see the reason for this, particularly now, next year, and perhaps the year after that, as we are going to really be careful as we see what comes forward in terms of money to our city, through the state and through the feds. I say this is something if it turns out that we need it somewhere down the road, we take a look at it. But it's been my experience over all these years that I've served on city council that this is not something that we need. I'll be voting no, and I'd like to encourage everyone to take a good solid look at this. Nothing is broken that we need to be fixing. Thank you.
I apologize, but there are some things in the debate that are being missed. So Councillor Connell, did you mean to speak, or could I turn the gavel over to you?
I was thinking of speaking, but you can turn the gavel over to me. I'll hold my tongue for now.
Let me make you a co-host of the Tonight Show. Hold on. Okay, you have the con.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Zeid's hand up, and I know that the council president wishes to speak. I'd ask Councillor Zeid, would you yield to
Yes.
Councillor Eigenmann for the time being? You've already spoken once.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Then, Councillor Eigenmann, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one thing that's being missed is I don't want the history to be forgotten. You know, for a very long time, 130 years in Massachusetts, elected school committees actually had complete authority over school budgets. Now, that hasn't come up at all in our debate, which is kind of shocking. Mm-hmm. So that actually is one of the things that made Massachusetts famous, was its commitment to education, and that we have school committees that are elected because it's such an important part of our government function. And in fact, it was, if you want to go back and try to understand, why did the report ever leave Newbury? It was a fight over funding schools, actually, because the other people in Newbury really didn't want to pay for schools. It just wasn't a priority for them. So that's being lost in this debate. And that all changed because Prop 2.5 was passed in 1980. So for the first time ever, and it's now 40 years in, mayors could basically just, tell the school committee, yes, I know you're elected, but I don't care, and submit a budget that was whatever the mayor wanted, just like other departments. And so the special treatment of schools was ended. And that went to court. I said this in the budget hearing last week. Within almost immediately, there was a fight over that, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court of Massachusetts in '82 in Leominster, because the Leominster School Committee wanted to give more money and was shocked and amazed that the mayor could ignore them, and they couldn't even have their voice heard at the city council. So I think what's being misunderstood here is this 1987 law is not about empowering the city council. It's about restoring power to our elected school committee, which without this law, really all they're left with, as the court said in this 1982 decision, is authority over curriculum. But their budgeting powers are just, they've been gelded. So, I don't understand at all the testimony we've had saying that this is somehow undermining the school committee. That's 180 degrees wrong. Only the school committee can recommend, as some of the sponsors said, additional funding. And I think there's a forgetfulness on this council of what happened in 2015. There absolutely was, I guess you could call it divisiveness. To me, I call it democracy, where there was a disagreement. The majority of the school committee were elected, and the entirety of the city council, all 11 of us, disagreed with one elected official, the mayor, on how much money should go to the schools that particular year. And it was not a futile effort when we adopted the Act of 1987, although yes, it was vetoed. We didn't press it because it forced to the table the mayor. It certainly was an unpleasant time. I can send you the emails from that time. The mayor was not happy with us, but we were doing our bit. We were saying we disagree. It's not divisiveness. This isn't a dictatorship where we just, anything is treason if you don't do what the executive says. We had an honest difference of opinion. And by forcing to the table the administration, we identified actually quite a lot more cuts. I had myself only $184,000. I think ultimately the mayor negotiated with us and came up with $65,000. And that's how we were able to hire and fill some positions, at least part-time at the school, that otherwise were not going to be filled. And the school committee provided us with a list of their priorities for hiring. We didn't write it up, nor could we. That is not in our power. All we can do, if this law is adopted, as we tried to adopt 5 years ago, take the recommendation of the experts saying, you know what, we'd like some more money, and then 2/3 of us have to approve it, which is very unlikely, I recognize. But it's the only thing that our state legislature came up with to balance the violent, radical revolution against school committees in 1980. It's a restoration of some of their power. It doesn't really give us any power. And, to say that it's some sort of unconstitutional or untoward usurpation, that's silly. I mean, because again, it's in the statute. Beacon Hill has come up with this as a fix, and it's been on the books for 33 years. So again, it's not going to come up this year, but I do, as I said in the committee meeting, I really wish people would look beyond personalities. There was a long explanation in a letter from the vice chair about the merits of the current superintendent. That doesn't mean anything. The merits of the current school committee doesn't mean anything. The merits of this council don't mean anything, or this mayor. This is a structural change. We're talking on a scale of centuries, not months. So I really hope that, the council, nothing's changed from 5 years ago. It was a good move 5 years ago. It was the right thing to do. And it's the right thing to do now. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I'm going to recognize Counselor Zeid, and then Counselor Khan,
I'll yield for the moment. Thank you.
you yield. Counselor Khan.
Yes, I know I already spoke, and I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said. So I just want to, again, go back to, and I think the council president was saying this a little bit, you know, we shouldn't look at the players who are here today. And I think that's what really compelled me to see this as really benefiting the city, is that in any situation, new people, new players in all of these roles that are elected and serving to do specific things. And so again, one of the things that came up during the charter review, and I know from conversations with other residents, is, you know, oftentimes given our structure, our city structure and our school committee structure, you know, we do have, the mayor has a voting voice on that committee, which is, you know, in conversations like this, is again part of that process. So you know, the comments that about divisiveness, I guess I just don't see that. One other aspect that I don't think was mentioned yet is that any increase, and I'll just read it from the FAQ, and I apologize if everyone already has the FAQ and I've already read it, but I think one thing that's really important is that if the increase is going to go to the schools, and if this is approved by 2/3, what it does is we then have to reduce items on the city side budget. And that conversation, and I guess when we talk about what do I mean by transparency, I think part of it is we are elected by the residents here, and making cuts in other line items is a transparent process. And we all are in that dialogue. We're all looking line by line, and residents are watching, you know, what are the areas we're gonna cut to make it work for the schools. And so that's why I think everyone is elected to serve with, you know, the area that they're going to advocate for. But we all also have to respond and speak to the residents. And I think that's, again, why I find this actually something that should be adopted, and I hope will be. And I see it just working in the betterment of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Are there any other counselors who wish to speak on this matter? Having spoken, is there any, I'll come back to you in a moment, Counselor Tantar. Are there any counselors who have not yet spoken who wish to speak on this matter? Then Counselor Tantar, you're up, and Counselor Khan, your hand is still up.
I just want to be clear about a couple of things. First of all,
thank you.
I was 31 years old when Prop 2.5 was put before the voters. I opposed it at the time. I worked against it, and the shift, the debate at the time, the shift, all right, was to put constraints on municipal taxing powers. It was an echo of Proposition 13 in California, but there was a recognition that if you were going to constrain the taxing powers of a municipality, then you have to also constrain the school part of the budget, which made up and still makes up the majority of the council, and that presents the problem. And it was debated then. And the problem is if school committees can put forward anything without regard to the city side of the budget, you would have conflict breakout. And this is what I meant by divisiveness, and I wasn't clear, and I apologize for that. You will have potentially firefighters, police, DPW workers, and teachers with their own political bases going after each other. All right, and that's what I meant by divisiveness. If you add a political, I understand some of you think of that as democracy. I think what we have currently is democracy. So I look over the past 10 years, and I have not seen the school committee offering budgets above what the mayor. They could do that now. They could come in. It's just that the council, the mayor has an obligation to balance the budget, and the council has an obligation to balance the budget. So as the at-large councilor noted, And I want to, as counselors, as elected officials, we will be cutting other departments. All right. I mean, that's the tough decision. All right. And let's say we don't do it. And then you might have citizens who have a particular position who then want to support certain counselors. All right. Because they would increase the school budget. And, I think that adds a lot of divisiveness. It was discussed in 1980. And a lot of the and it's interesting it's coming up because a lot of the negative aspects of Prop 2.5 were mediated by the revenue the state was able to bring in, which the state continued to do through the 2007-2008 Bush recession. And it actually hit the state a little earlier than that. And when that happened, Prop 2.5 began to really begin to pinch. So it's interesting we're having this discussion because it is an echo of the discussion that we had in 1980. And so let me just close on this. I wish the school committee had offered a resolution on this. I wish they had researched this with the superintendent in the room and the support that they would have had there. I would have liked to have seen how this is, why other communities aren't adopting this, how this is played out. I would have liked evidence on that. And, it'd be a whole different game if the school committee had come in with budgets over and above what was put, what the mayor put in the budget process. If there has a history of that not occurring, I would have perhaps a different attitude on it. But what we have had has in essence worked, and I just don't understand, just don't see what this would add to it at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Zeid's hand is up. No one else who has not yet previously spoken has volunteered to speak. So, Counselor Zeid.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So I'm a little bit at a loss as to which to respond to first. So first of all, I wasn't born in 1980, so I wasn't around for the Prop 2.5 discussion, but I am certainly here in 2020.
Hold that against you, Ken.
Yeah, and I certainly can speak to the last 5 years since I've been on the council as well. So a couple of the comments that have been made are, money has to give, something has to give in order to give more money to the schools. Another comment was made that, in order potentially to give more to the schools, cuts have to be made. What sort of makes me feel a little bit incredulous about that is that that's sort of exactly describing what the council's job is. That is effectively what our job is the balancing and priorities of the city are a large part of the city council's responsibility. It is not solely the responsibility of the mayor to decide the entire direction of the city. This is the debate that I feel we've been having for the last 5 years, is to what extent should the city council have a role in determining the direction of the city? My answer is quite a bit. And the way that gets done is through the budget. So I think everybody understands that we are not a city of infinite means, as much as we wish that we were. But to skirt the issue by saying, well, if you want to give more money to the schools, you have to cut from something else, and so you're going to have other services suffering. I think another at-large counselor put it well. Yes, that's exactly what the budget process is. It's done in public view. It's done in committee meetings. It's done on the council. And every year, just about in my 5 years, cuts have been made. Money has been freed up, so to say. And those cuts only take effect when 6 counselors agree to make that cut. And then once the cuts are complete, you may recall that effectively the money goes to no man's land. It doesn't exist anywhere other than for the mayor to reallocate it at her sole discretion. And that's essentially the check and balance that we're talking about in this point. So it was stated earlier that, well, I've seen in other budgets that, quote, it was decided on. Decided on by whom? That's the role of the city council. So we've had many debates about what is the role of the council, how much should council be involved in operations, if at all. We have charter language on that, yes, but any argument that the city council is not responsible for the budget in a major, major way is simply not something that I can accept. So I don't understand, I guess it is semantics, whether you call it democracy or divisiveness, but, this is the process of settling out those things. So, you want to ask about, okay, I'd like the school committee to weigh on on this. Well, they haven't weighed in on it as a body, but we did hear from 4 different school committee members their support. 3 of them spoke or commented last week at the budget meeting, and 1 of them sent us an email today. We did have 1 opposed as well, and being fair of all the comments that we received. With all due respect to the superintendent, we certainly need his input on how to expend money, but we're talking about, basically the direction of the city budget, the direction of the schools, and there's no way that we can hide from that. There's no way the city council can hide from that, even though I admit it would be cleaner and more cleanly, and it certainly would be easier for me as a counselor to respond to a resident and say, well, I guess I don't really have any power over the budget anyways. I'm sorry, I can't help you. That's easier for me, but that's also passing the buck. So again, you've got a high bar here that was, I think, consented to or agreed to by another commenter. But yeah, money has to come and go. That's how we determine the priorities. That's what we do every 2 weeks. That's what we do every time we debate on a transfer, as we will momentarily here on other matters. And that's what we do every year in the budget, which I think is easily in the top 3 things that we do. So I'm not afraid of that discussion. I'm not afraid of having that push and pull. And as was said, if we cut from somewhere else, we've got to answer for that too. But this is again, it's not. The last thing I'll say is it's not that those decisions are not being made. They're being made every day. This is simply balancing in a more appropriate way with checks and balances how that decision is made and making it more public. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Vogel.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Points well made by the counselor from Ward 1. Just one clarification. When we do cut money from the budget during the budget process, it was alluded that it goes into a pot that is solely at the discretion of the mayor. That's not completely accurate. It does go to into free cash, or it does go into the budget unappropriated. But if that money wishes to be spent, we need to approve it. That's the only clarity I'd like to make. We don't hand that money over to anybody. We approve expenditures. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Wallace.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank the at-large Counselor Khan for the research that she did, and looking through that issue very thoroughly and in detail, and also given her experience with the school department and the education committee. I respect her opinions and her findings, and I also found the history that Council President Eigerman presented was fascinating, and something that we should pay attention to. So, but just really quickly, I'm hearing approving this gives us more options, more voices, more transparency, checks and balances. The downside is divisiveness and acrimony, which that's what we signed up for as counselors. I mean, that's our job. It is democracy to argue and to disagree and to look at how we divide up the priorities. So, and I'm not worried about the history. I wasn't on the council in 2015. It's interesting, but, maybe the school department, the school committee, will make changes in the future. I don't know. We can't just say, well, it didn't happen in the future, so it shouldn't happen, or it didn't happen in the past, so it can't happen in the future. So I will be voting for this because it just makes good sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. That's the only hand I see at this time. Is there any other counselor who wishes to express a view on the merits of this proposal? Going once, going twice. Seeing no hands, I think we should proceed to a roll call vote, and I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Be happy to, Mr. President Pro Tem. This is on a motion to approve the acts of 1987 Order 178. Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Shand is still absent. Councilor Tantar.
No.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Zeid.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Counselor Eigenmann.
Yes.
The motion passes. 2 no, 1 absent.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Jones. At this time, I'll pass the gavel back to Council President Eigenmann.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Connell. Sorry to throw you
It's okay.
to the wolves like that. Okay, Chair Tantar, anything else from Budget and Finance?
Motion to remove transfer 84 from committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Chair Tantar?
Yes, this comes to you with a 3-0 vote out of committee to recommend approval. We heard substantial public comment from people who live on the island of Reservation Terrace. So there's some aspects of this that I think everyone's pretty much aware of the challenge that homeowners have there. Last year we tried to get some concrete blocks put up there, DEP would not allow us to do that. So now this is a proposal to take $50,000, from the fund that we got in the settlement over the Plum Island construction, and take that 50,000, about approximately 1.8 million, and put it toward super sacs. The public felt that one layer of super sacs was insufficient. The mayor indicated at the budget committee meeting that she was, and she indicated again earlier tonight, that there was discussion with the lieutenant governor about perhaps getting assistance from DCR that could potentially pay for a second layer. Essentially, the idea is, as we understood in committee, here was that this was going to buy time, 1-2 years, with the anticipation that Congressman Moulton had put an effort in to get the Army Corps of Engineers to dredge out the mouth. That sand would then be available and provide more protection. And by that point, perhaps the jetty would have become had more holes in it, so maybe this process of eating it out, if that's what's causing it, would decrease. Just on a personal note, something that I know that has been out there that in general discussion is that in other communities that sea level rising is occurring, and it might be time to talk about retreat in many cases. In many communities that is taking place, especially on barrier islands. I think, and I attended, I think it was Storm Surge had an excellent presentation. I think it was between Christmas and New Year's, and not many people were able to attend on that. And a marine geologist had studied it extensively, and the phenomena that's causing this problem he described as the mouth of the river, the Merrimack River, wagging. And he said this is not like other barrier islands that are retreating and moving because of ocean activity. He said, as a matter of fact, Plum Island is one of the most stable barrier islands on the East Coast. It hasn't moved in 5,000 years, but it does. But the mouth of the river does change because of this particular activity that's occurring. And if we can buy some time for these folks out there, I support it, especially because there is this other dimension to the problem that is not just simply the ocean rising. I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor Zeid.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just wanted to say a few comments about this. So I, of course, am in support as one of the co-sponsors and the ward council for this area. And I wanted to just cover a couple of key questions that councilors may have in anticipation. So number one is the need is absolutely critical at this point. This has been an ongoing issue. I've also made an effort to email you over the months and years to try and update you, sending you pictures and so forth. But we certainly have reached sort of a crossroads, if you will. There was one storm in particular this past April, just a few months ago, that really did a number on many of the dunes, and unfortunately, previous efforts, some of which were designed to be sacrificial in the first place, have basically been eroded away, so to say, figuratively and literally. And so basically at the point now where there is, Little Beach at high tide, and obviously very highly susceptible to damage, both to homes as well as to the public infrastructure that exists under the streets, pardon me. And some homes have already experienced, one in particular has experienced, a significant loss back during that April storm. So, we're certainly at the point now where I don't think the need can be sort of debated. It's absolutely crucial. The second one is to talk to you about this specific proposal. So Councillor Tontar did kind of get us going there. This is not the only solution that was looked at. I think anytime we spend money, there's obviously questions about, is this the best solution? Is this the only solution? Why this one? What alternatives were considered? And I want to give you some comfort that basically, we tried to look at everything you possibly can. Obviously, there are 4 key constraints on the island that really govern what, start to narrow the path down in terms of coming to a solution. Number one is the amount of time you have. Given that it's September, time is running short in terms of trying to beat the nor'easter season in the winter. Second one is the regulatory environment. Councillor Tontar alluded to this, but we have obviously our local conservation commission, and then we also have a DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection at the state level, as well as some other agencies that have a purview over this sort of thing. And there are very few solutions, frankly, that they will consider acceptable. And so other solutions, even though they could potentially be more effective or different or better in different ways, perhaps worse in other ways, simply are not considerable. One of them is the so-called muscle wall and other hard structures. So that's always a constraint that we have to consider. The third one is funding. Obviously, there's just not enough of it around, as is typical, as we just had in our last debate. And so that's a constant question. And then the final one is an important one that I wanted to mention that may not come to mind immediately, which is the physicality of the beach. So every season that goes by, this changes. A couple years ago, you may recall that a fairly substantial nourishment was done. But at the time, there was a lot more dune to work with. So it's easier to sort of, work off of something that exists and expand it. Unfortunately, today that dune doesn't exist in the same way it did. So for example, you'd need a lot more sand in order to do a successful, useful nourishment today. And 2, you don't necessarily have the physical land even to access by vehicle, construction vehicle or otherwise, the beach that you could. So that's always an evolving thing. And so doing another nourishment now simply isn't really feasible due to the amount of sand you'd need. And again, the challenge is you'd need the only amount of sand you can really envision making a big difference at this point would really be the dredge of the Merrimack. So that's the second piece. The third one is this is an engineered solution. So it's not a shot in the dark, so to say. The city did have a consultant named GZA, which did look at this solution, did the measurements, did the studies to determine the best placement of the bags, the number of bags, as you heard. There are some options within this plan, that are somewhat budget dependent as far as doing a second row of super sacks, as they call them, and so forth. But the plans are available. The plans were presented to the Conservation Commission about 3 weeks ago, where they were met with approval with some modifications here and there and some changes. But it's not, throwing sand out on the beach. Let's just say that it's something that's had some thought put into it, and hopefully will maximize the investment for the protection. Third piece is, Plum Island comes up, obviously elicits different opinions and feelings about what to do with Plum Island and retreat and terms like that are used. But I really do hope that you'll find a way to sympathize with residents here. I've been at this for 5 years. I've studied it a lot, not as a scientist, but just observing and learning. And believe me, it is a steep learning curve to kind of get your head around all the players, what all the acronyms mean, where the streets are, what they're even talking about when they talk about these paths, this path, the dunes, and so forth. But the thing I keep coming back to is the importance of the jetty on this situation. You can talk to almost any old timer out on the island, and they'll tell you that this erosion pattern is certainly something they've seen before, and there's a strong nexus to the completion of the jetty. And that's a very long-term problem, and unfortunately, in order to fix. And I think Councillor Tontar kind of alluded to that too, that the mouth of the river plays a role, but I just wanted to focus down on the jetty, which is another human intervention. And anybody who's been out there, you can see it with your own eyes, the amount of beach that has been created on the outside of the jetty. Essentially, a lot of that sand is the sand that used to fill in this bowl area. And the final piece is that wouldn't be a complete discussion of a transfer without considering the source of the funds. So we had been struggling, frankly, to think, how do you find money for this? And I had suggested, why don't we think about using this fund? I'm obviously very protective of this fund as the ward councillor, because it really is the money for the water and sewer, particularly the sewer settlement fund. But I felt that there was a strong enough nexus here between the protection of that infrastructure and the purpose of the fund for which it was set out. As you all know, it takes 8 votes in order to get money out of this fund. But if we do have a critical failure out there in terms of the public infrastructure, then effectively that is a problem for all of the ratepayers in the city, because it has to be dealt with. And certainly some of that could be by turning off the system for a period of time, but that's only a short-term solution. At some point, it would have to be restored. The money in this fund, for other residents who are listening, is dedicated to Plum Island. It's not general fund money. It's not tax dollar money. And I think that in this case, again, there's a strong nexus there. And I hope that you will support it. And I continue to participate in MRBA and all of those meetings. And I'm happy to answer any questions if I can be of assistance, or it's anything in mind you're wondering about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Connell's next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I'll give myself an appropriate backdrop for this discussion for a few moments. That's a couple of points I'd like to make, and I come at this with some misgivings. Having taught coastal geology out on the refuge with the Youth Conservation Corps some years ago, several arguments have been made. Is this needed? I believe it's a good idea. Yeah, it is needed for those houses that are threatened right now, and for the water and sewer system, which is likewise threatened. Is it a good solution? Yeah, it's a pretty good solution. It's certainly more durable than some of the things we've done in the past. Some of you may recall, whether or not you were on the council at the time, we appropriated some money a number of years ago. My memory is not clear on exactly how much. It was in the $30,000 range to put some sand out there, and it was washed away in a coastal storm in about 10 days. This is a more durable solution, and although GZA is a competent group, one thing I would caution us to, when we hear a report like this, is that they've not provided any sense of the uncertainty associated with their specific recommendations. Is it more durable than throwing sand on the beach? Yes. Is it less durable than something else? Perhaps. But it does protect the water and sewer system, which is of some concern. And it does buy us some time. I don't think people who live on the mainland begrudge their neighbors on the island the opportunity to live there. But I have to point a couple of things out. I think that the willingness to support an appropriation to continually save the homes on Plum Island and the private property there has its limit. I don't know exactly where it is yet, but increasingly conversations I've had with people center around the fact that those people who live on the island, good neighbors, have made a choice to live there. And there is some resentment, and I think we have to say this openly, among the rest of the population, that money may be spent there to preserve the properties on the island, which is a very special place, that not everyone agrees with. Not everyone thinks that this is a a worthwhile expenditure. And I keep on hearing the word, and I believe one of the at-large councilors said earlier, the notion of retreat comes up increasingly in these conversations. Nonetheless, and there are a couple of other things I do want to say. It does, again, preserve the water and sewer system that serves everyone on the island, in which there is a substantial public investment. But let's be careful about buying time for a year or two and expecting the Army Corps to rush in and save the day with a dredging project. I've been, by virtue of my gray hair and bald head, through a number of cycles of this dredging on my time in the council, and they're not running to save us. They move at a glacial pace. Is it a year? Is it 2 years? I would be surprised. So let's not fool ourselves in thinking that we're just going to get this beach area stabilized for a short enough period of time, a year or two, before the Army Corps. I hope they do, but I'm not confident of that. And I don't think the mayor or her staff would say that the dredging is imminent. It's not. Finally, the insurance industry is speaking fairly loudly to all of us who place ourselves in harm's way. And with the changes associated with global climate change, a barrier beach system, a very dynamic system, is a place where investment of the type that we make in our homes may not always be prudent. I will vote for this in the end, feeling somewhat like the Dutch boy with his thumb stuck in the leaking dike. I'm not sure that this is the ultimate solution. I don't believe it is. I don't think anyone is pretending that it is. I'm hoping that it's a prudent expenditure and a prudent interim step. But I'm holding my breath. That's all I have to say about it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Lane.
Hi, thank you. Just a few points. Hearing what the Councillor at Large just spoke of, you know, these are our neighbors. So we're spending money around town on things that are increasing tourism and going to increase, you know, revenues that come in. Let's just bear in mind that these folks are residents of Newburyport. And I feel like whatever we can do to help them should be done. Regardless of if it's a temporary solution, at this point, they have interest in our city just as much as someone who lives in Ward 6, say. So I will be voting for this, and I feel very strongly in that we should really look at some future solutions that are more permanent and not balk at any that come up along the way. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor, any councillors who haven't spoken yet? Seeing none, I'll snake back around to Councillor Zeid.
Yeah, just briefly, I just wanted to respond to the at-large councilors, at least some of the comments. So I, you know, I guess what I want to say is that, you know, Plum Island is just like any other part of the city. I think this is where the Ward 6 councilors may be thinking as well. Just every part of the city has different needs. And so, you know, I really would urge the council to start thinking about Plum Island a little bit differently. It certainly took me some years to figure this out, but it's like anything else. You know, you can't pave a road and leave it for all of time. It's not a permanent solution. You can't fix Plum Island once and for all. It is a management process, and that involves every aspect of management. And I just want to say that a lot of work has gone in over the last 5 years to try and improve the path situation, the access situation, the Moby mats, the beach itself, the nourishments, trying, yes, you know, if, you know, it is like molasses with the Army Corps of Engineers at times, but you can't let up. It just has to be an ongoing process. And so much like we need to work on drainage projects around the city or paving projects around the city or tree issues that come up in a specific neighborhood or gas leaks or water leaks, it's all kind of the same thing. Plum Island just a little bit unique. It's got some different issues. but it's an ongoing thing. And you know, yes, I think that, you know, Plum Island's not going to go away. This isn't going to make it go away. This isn't the solution. But again, as was stated, I think that the need is there today, and we've got to kind of start looking at things on a longer term basis. I certainly agree with that. So I wanted to acknowledge the comments. I think they're fair. I think it's fair to have that discussion. I'm just telling you that, you know, what I want to say is you don't solve Plum Island. You manage Plum Island. It is changing. It is dynamic. And you've just got to keep doing what you can based on as long as the funding you have can go, and as long as your view kind of shows you. And I do think that I can say with confidence that that's what we're doing here. We're doing the best that we can with what we have in terms of information, time, money, and the regulatory environment as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Other counselors who wish to speak? Anyone at all? Yes, Councillor Tantar.
Yeah. You know, again, I was very much influenced by that presentation by the marine geologist from Virginia, whose name I cannot recall now, and I didn't look it up, and I apologize for that. But he, you know, and the key was that, and this is what I would tell people who do not, you know, want to help these people out, because they're thinking about global warming, sea level rising. And if people live by the shore and they lose their houses, then they made that decision because there are a whole bunch of decisions the rest of us have made that have resulted in that condition. But that's not what the problem is there. And he was pretty, you know, I understand there's a lot of controversy over it, but he was pretty convincing that it was a phenomenon that's been occurring for thousands and thousands of years that's causing this. And he did speak to the jetty issue, by the way, and he said, you know, it's hard to be anti-jetty because it's the jetty that actually did create that part of Plum Island. Without the jetties there, that outer fork simply would not exist. So it's something that has to be managed shotgun. But one of the residents asked him, would you buy property on Plum Island? And this is to speak to the at-large councilor's concern. And his response was, you know, if you have a 20, 30-year time frame, yes. If you had a 50 or more year time frame, it depends on global warming and sea level rising and whether or not we can do something about it between now and then. That was his answer. And so that won't be my problem, but it will be a problem. Because that is not just the wagging of the you know, of the mouth of the river. It's something much bigger than that.
Thank you, Councillor. Why don't we call the roll?
It's the roll on a motion to approve transfer number 84. Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Zeid.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Council President Eigenman.
Yes. Chair Tantar, do you have anything else?
Motion to remove Order 208 from the Budget and Finance Committee.
Second.
Second.
Motion to up.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So we have to vote on it.
Yeah, we do. All those in favor of removing it from committee, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, go ahead.
Motion to approve.
Second.
So this comes to you with a recommendation from committee to approve 3-0. This actually is work that was done by the Parks Department in the lower Atkinson Common at the request of the Pioneer League. And so this gift is actually a payment, 100% payment for the cost of the material and labor, equipment, and that was done by the Parks Department. So it's noteworthy that the Pioneer League and the Parks Department are working hand in hand in this. And I think it's to the benefit of the city, it's the benefit to the league, it's the benefit to those ball players, and I certainly support it.
Councilor Zeid, thank you.
The only thing I wanted to add, and I voted in favor in committee and will support, of course, gratefully the acceptance of the gift here. But one thing we were running out of time last week, but it really is time to get back to the fee schedule that was worked out by the city council for use of these fields. I think the whole idea of that, and I think it was an 8 or 9 month exercise to get through that, was to start to basically break away from the gift concept and the donation concept in an effort to make things more transparent for people, so that people could understand, what was being paid for kids in this case to use the fields, and then be fair for the city in terms of getting an expectation, because certainly, what to expect in terms of funds, and certainly to iron out expectations for, care of the fields and so forth, which I think in the past has been an area of discussion. So we had a gift a couple weeks ago. We have this gift here from the Pioneer League, both of which are accepted gratefully, at least by me. I'll be voting yes. But as I stated in the meeting, I think the entire idea here was to move away from this so that we had something a little bit more solid. And I just wanted to state that the Parks Director, who was on the call last week, said that they are trying to get to some kind of agreement, sort of similar to what the youth soccer has with Cherry Hill, and that could and would need to come through the council. So I just want to plug that and hope that will get done so that we don't have to do it this way. I just think it'll be more fair and more transparent all around. Thank you.
I have a question for the Finance Director, Ethan Manning. So I'm confused. So they're not paying the fee? This is in lieu of a fee? I thought the fee was law.
Council President, the fee schedule does exist, and I believe it is enforced. This particular donation was for specific work that was above and beyond the fee schedule, specifically to do with the infield on one of the ball fields over there. So it's more to support the fee schedule, not to replace it.
Okay, but were the fees paid?
I would need to talk to the Parks Director about that to confirm, which I will do.
Okay, because I mean, if the Parks Commission doesn't want to have a fee schedule, we can repeal it, but it's not optional. It's not written that way. We don't write laws, as a gas. So please report back to us. If it's not being charged, we'll repeal it.
I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you. Other counselors? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Anything else, Chair Tontar?
I just want to note, Mr. President, that I placed communication 260 to possibly come out. We ran out of time. It's just the fiscal year 2020 year-end financial report, so it's not particularly pressing to come out. So we will bring that out later. We didn't get a chance to review it in committee. Thank you.
All right, appreciate that. Is that it for budget?
That's it for budget and finance.
Thank you very much. Chair Khan, Education.
Yes, thank you, Council President. The Education Committee will be meeting next week on Monday, the 21st of September. I am asking if anyone has any items for the agenda to please send them along, and I will be posting that by Tuesday for the meeting. So please, if anything from counselors here that you want to see addressed, the schools are opening this week. And kids start on Wednesday, which will be an all remote day. And then they're going to be in their cohorts or they're going to be in their designated group. So it'll be nice to get an update as well from the schools on that. Thank you.
Okay, and then are there any cleanup items? I'm guilty of this too, because I'm general government. I've been sitting on something since May, but any of the other items in your committee, I mean, you could, I guess, receive and file the act, right, of 1987?
Well, I could, but even though we kind of did a joint committee, we didn't open the Education Committee up and we didn't close it. So what I'm going to do is on the 21st, I'll add that definitely as an agenda item. And then by our next meeting, just receive and file it then.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So that comes to general government. I've been sitting on the charter review final report. I had meant to have a meeting at the end of August of general government. We had talked about that, I think, in May or June. I didn't do it. I've been consumed by the budget, so that means also I'm not going to be able to do it before the 29th. So I want to say that I want to clean up my agenda in October. Part of that also will be, we have another one of these charter groups, some of whom of you have already been nominated to, and that's the code review. So we got to get going on that. Mea culpa, I will get it done in October. Licenses and permits, Chair Devlin. Go ahead. Nope, you muted yourself. Nope, you're muted. There you go. Now you're up. Nope. You keep clicking it twice.
My arrow won't work. It was frozen.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
My finger. Nothing to report.
Okay, nothing tonight. All right. Neighborhood and city services.
Yes, Mr. President. I'm going to ask, there's nothing noticed in the agenda as coming out of committee, so I'd like to ask for suspension of the rules so that we might bring ordinance 61 out of committee.
Second.
Well, why do you have to, what do you mean? Why do you have to suspend the rules? I'm confused.
Because we didn't notice it in the agenda for an item that was going to come out tonight.
Oh, that's okay. That's optional. I mean, that's okay. You can just bring it out, motion to remove it.
Then motion to remove ordinance 61 from committee.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Councilor Tantar, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Just point of order, that this item, this was not in the packet, was it?
No.
Well, now we've got a rule to waive. What do you want to do?
I haven't looked at it. I didn't, I would like to take a look at it and do a little research. I do research all this stuff before I vote on it, so.
I think, Mr. President, if I may.
Yeah, please proceed.
I think that this is an issue that we have acted on previously, and it's an extension of a deadline. So I think that Councilor Tantar's point is well taken, but I think if he sees the presentation or hears the presentation, he'll see the wisdom of bringing this out and acting on it tonight.
Well, I'd like you to go ahead. Why don't you make the presentation and then we can rule on it.
Very briefly, this is the opportunity that we gave organizations and private citizens and businesses to use our parks and recreational facilities for the purposes of providing exercise and other opportunities during this COVID-19 crisis. And you may recall, we acted on it previously. The purpose was to kind of open things up a little bit under some specific circumstances that were in the original ordinance that we passed. However, it had a sunset date on it, and that was August 31st, 2020. And so the sponsor had asked us to make an amendment here and extend this the provisions of this ordinance until October 31st, 2020. I guess the colloquial name for this is the Kinsey rule. And it gives people the opportunity to use our parks in a way that they might not otherwise. And it seemed to us, and the Committee on Neighborhood and City Services met tonight prior to this meeting at 7 o'clock and voted in favor of recommending that we take this up and with these amendments, adopt this ordinance, which would be in effect until October 31st, 2020.
So if I may, so yes. I recall we passed this earlier in the summer for former Councilor Kinsey.
Yes. What was
the date that we put on it before?
August 31st.
Okay. So nothing is changing except the date?
The only thing that's changing is the date. We're extending the provisions for a couple more months.
Okay, and I'm rifling through the rules. Clerk Jones, I know it's our practice. We want it to be in the, let's see, supporting documents shall be placed in the packet.
They were not.
Only the first time the item is introduced to the council. Subsequently, as items are taken up for debate, whether in committee or during regular meetings, it shall be the responsibility of each counselor to have retained the documents for reference. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the electronic version of the packet posted on the website shall be complete. So that's Rule 17B. Yeah, so it wasn't complete. So if counselors want to take it up, we're going to have to waive that rule, 17B, because the electronic copy didn't have it in. Oh, what do you guys want to do?
I would move to suspend the rules for the purposes of moving forward on this.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Counselor Vogel seconded Clerk Jones. Is there a debate on waiving the rule? I see your hand up, Counselor Zeid. Do you want to speak on that?
Yes, I'd like to just offer a friendly amendment to the motion to also waive the rule, as this is an ordinance, to waive the second reading requirement so that we can do it finally tonight and dispose of it all in one night. So it's 17B, and I apologize, I don't remember the other number off the top of my head.
I think it's 9B.
9B, if it's friendly to the sponsor of the amendment or to the proposal.
Certainly is.
Because otherwise we'll have to do it again in 2 weeks.
Yep.
All right, okay, all right. So on the floor is a motion to waive those two rules, 9B and 17B, just so we can adopt an ordinance. And what, we still have an emergency? No, we don't have an emergency. Do we have an emergency? Yes, we do.
No,
No, because it's already been introduced.
It's already been introduced. Okay, thank you. All right. Any debate on that? Okay.
So just what's been already introduced? This came in the council meeting on 7:30, and we passed it, right? So we're amending something that was done, right?
No, I think the amendment came in. There was an amendment that was an amendment came in on July 30th.
Correct.
It was referred to committee.
Yeah, we actually voted on this earlier in the summer, the original.
With the date specific.
Yeah, August 31st.
And has there been a subsequent amendment to change the date, or is that what we have before
Yeah,
us?
that's right. That's ordinance 61. That's just the amendment, Counselor, but it wasn't in the packet.
And when did ordinance 61 come in?
July 30th. July 30.
Okay.
So it's been in committee since July 30. The error is that it wasn't put in the packet tonight.
I understand.
Okay. Counselor Connell.
Yes, a little more context, and it relates to the motion before us, and that is the reason I did not notify the counselors by having it put into your and highlighted in your agendas was that I was just informed on Wednesday that the sponsor wanted to have this come out, and so we did a quick step on it. Met tonight, and that's the process by which we missed the notification deadline for your packets.
Okay. Counselor Khan.
Yes, thank you. Can I just, can you repeat the amendment? So I brought it up from our council packet on July 30th.
Yep.
And just so I know, is it the last sentence where this section and any permits approved under it shall expire on October 31st, 2020 at 11:59 p.m.? Is that what we're changing?
That's exactly what it is. It's the last paragraph of the ordinance. August is crossed out. It's replaced with October.
Okay, so why does mine say October 31st already?
Oh, no, I understand the confusion. So when we originally passed the ordinance, it said August 31st. Then we had a special meeting on July 30th where it was properly introduced to change it to October 31st.
Got it, okay.
The problem is it's been sitting in committee this whole time and it didn't make it into the packet. So they didn't change it in committee. It's as it was introduced, October 31st.
The edit you see was the edit that was presented to the committee.
Right,
Okay, so it
no
came
further
in.
amendments been made. Yeah.
Yeah, so it came in on July 30th with no change to how it looks. So that's what confused me, is I thought there was an amendment that we're voting on. So we're just voting on this. Thank you.
You're right.
If there is a confusion, it's that rather than introduce just that one sentence as an amendment, they reintroduced the whole section.
Got
So
it.
it makes it look as if it's all new, but it's not.
Okay, thank
Counselor
you.
Zeid.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give the dates because maybe it will help. The original one to create this in the first place was introduced on May 26th, and then it passed, I believe in June is when we passed it, and that was the one that had the August 31st. Then it was completely out of the packet, and then the idea came up to extend it, so I put in a new one. So the previous one was Ordinance 58. That one was passed and disposed of. It's the law. It expired on August 31st. And then this is a new one. And the only change in it, nothing is changing in it except changing August to October. So, and they're both 31st. So it's really just one word, changing August to October. And that's what came in on July 30th and has been hanging out in committee since that time. So that's what's before. Well, right now we have the motion to waive the rules. Then we'll have the motion, I think, to approve.
Yeah, and just for the record, it's on tape, and I don't want to confuse the clerk. Because of the way these ordinances are written, there currently is no ordinance. Okay, the last ordinance, poof, it disappeared into thin air on August 31st. So in practice, all we've changed from the previous version is the date, but this stands on its own, this ordinance.
Got it.
All right. With all that, we just have a procedural motion to waive these two rules. We need 2/3, so I'm going to take a roll call on that.
Okay, so this is a roll call to waive 9B and 17B. Councilor Lane,
Yes.
Councilor McCauley,
Yes.
Councilor Connell,
Yes.
Councilor Tontar,
Yes.
Councilor Vogel,
Yes.
Councilor Wallace,
Yes.
Councilor Zeid,
Yes.
Councilor Devlin,
Yes.
Councilor Khan,
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. All right. That was less controversial than I thought. How about the underlying motion to approve? I think
Mr.
you
President,
have
the
that.
motion to approve.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't have that yet. All right. How about a second?
Second.
Okay. So Councilor Connell and then Councilor Zeid.
I defer to Councilor Zeid as the sponsor. I think we know the detail here, and that is we're changing a date on the last paragraph, as Councilor Khan noted, from August to October, which makes this October 31st, 2020, and that's the date at which this version would expire.
Any further comments? Seeing none. This one, I'm going to, Councilor Zeid.
Sorry, so only three things I could add that are new. So number one is the October 31st date was selected to homogenize with the other efforts that we've made in downtown. So that's why October 31st was selected. That's number one. Number two is I want you to know that, you know, this has benefited a lot of folks. The request actually to extend this you know, came from the Y that's been in sort of a fragile position financially as it relates to these. So this is having a good impact, a positive impact across various businesses. While it may have a colloquial name, it is kind of a benefit to many. And the third piece is this extension did go through the Parks Commission. So in case you're wondering if the Parks Commission had an opportunity to discuss this, they did. They supported it unanimously. I have to admit, I didn't know that that's how it would end. The August date was selected at the beginning because, you know, wasn't sure how far they would be willing or wanted to give up on the fees. But I think there's a lot of patience here with COVID. So it did go through, it did come out, and that's where, and that included the October date. Everything else is the same. So I hope those three pieces of information add a little bit more context. Thank you.
Further debate. Councilor Lane.
Not further debate. I just, October 31st, we're looking at a month and a half. Are we looking to coincide this with those dates, or does it make sense to do an amendment for a further date? Not to throw a monkey wrench here, just thinking ahead. If it's been beneficial to people, why not go for a further date? If we're looking to coincide this with another decision in town with the Board of Health or whoever needs to look at it, that would be my common sense view, is to why not put this to a later date, like November 31st, if we do have seasonal temperatures and folks can benefit from it in the city.
Councilor Zeid.
I don't personally have any opposition to that, but out of respect for the Parks Commission, I mean, basically, we're not saying that these organizations can't use the parks after October 31st. We're just saying that the normal fee schedule goes back into effect. So I would take that back to them and ask, but I would say if we can, because the other one expired on August 31st, frankly, I didn't catch it, so that's on me. But we're in this, we've had 2 weeks now, we're sort of out of this, and there is consensus to go with October 31st. I will gladly take that idea back and see. So, but just to be clear, anybody can continue booking the parks beyond, I mean, they can go all winter if it so allows, weather-wise. It's just a question of whether the regular fees get reinstated. That's the big question, so.
Yeah, just a point of information. When we did the October 31st for the outdoor dining, we actually got that from state law. Some of the orders by Governor Baker and the State Health Department, that's the date they used, and they were sort of reserving judgment on what happens after October 31st. So we didn't pick that out of the air, actually. Further debate. Not seeing anything. Let's just do a voice vote on this one. I think it'll be fine.
I think it's an ordinance, Mr. President.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay.
So this would be the first and second reading together. Ordinance 61. Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Zeid?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman? Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Okay. Is that it for neighborhood and city service?
Yes, it is. Nothing else.
Thank you. Planning and development, Vice Chair McCauley.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend collectively for approval Brendan Banovic as an alternate to the ZBA and Rachel Webb as a reappointment to the ZBA.
Yes,
Second.
Councilor.
Excuse me. Point of order.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor. Yep, Devlin.
Yes, I'm going to recuse myself. This is our last group, right? I'm in my office. I'm not coming back. I'm going to go home. So good luck to you all.
Thank you. Okay, so we had a Clerk Jones, did you get a first and a second?
I did. I had Councilor McCauley and Councilor Khan.
Vice Chair McCauley, any explanation, any color on these two?
Thank you. Brendan Banovic has been a resident for 8 years. He's got a background in chemical engineering. He has been enthralled with the architecture in the city, and as an alternate, he feels he can study up and learn some of the zoning laws that would be appropriate for this. And the committee recommended him 3-0 to move forward. With Rachel Webb, she's a reappointment. She has a known history of being on the council. She was on the ZBA. She was a replacement for an unfilled position, and the recommendation would be to give her her own term, and that recommendation was 3-0 from the committee forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Debate? Roll call.
Appointments 185 and 188. Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Zeid?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes. Anything else from planning and development?
Nothing else from planning and development.
Okay, now your other hat, public safety.
Nothing for public safety tonight.
Thank you. Public utilities, Chair Zeid.
Nothing tonight, but I just want to let you know that at the next meeting, just to give you a heads up, we've got a couple of appointments in committee, number 156 and 166, and the related resume. And I hope to be able to bring those out after coordinating with my colleagues to set a meeting date between now and the next meeting. So just a heads up.
Thank you. Chair Vogel, rules.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Good of the order. Any hands? Looking for hands. No hands. How about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.